of Israel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I begin my statement, I would like to comment on the two briefings we heard today. Israel is engaged with various UN agencies in good faith at the highest levels, and it is unfortunate that OCHA has continued to abandon all semblance of neutrality and impartiality in its statements and actions, despite claiming otherwise and claiming to adhere to them here today in this room. While referencing the West Bank and events that took place all the way back in May, both briefers only addressed Palestinian casualties based on information that is presented by Hamas. If it is neutrality and impartiality that our UN colleagues adhere to, why was there no mention, let alone a condemnation, of the terror attack where a 9-month pregnant woman was murdered by Palestinian terrorists and her unborn son was seconded to his wombs 15 days afterwards? Mr. President, Roni and Alma Miran are 4 and 2.5 years old. Like many kids their age, they regularly make pretend phone calls on their toy phones. But unlike most children their age, when their mother, Lishai, asks them who they're speaking to, their answer carries a deep pain. The answer is always the same: Abba, Dad. They ask, "Where are you, Daddy? Are they letting you return to us?" They hug and kiss his photo, not able to physically do so for 21 months. Their father, Omri Miran, has been held hostage by Hamas in Gaza for 649 days. For those two young girls, that's nearly their entire lives without their Abba. Earlier this month, twin sisters Emma and Yuli Cunyo, who were themselves abducted by Hamas alongside with their parents on October 7th, celebrated their 5th birthday. What should have been a day filled with balloons, laughter, and joy was instead a somber affair marked by absence and pain, because it was their 2nd birthday without their father, David Cunyo, who is still held hostage in Gaza. Their birthday wish was heartbreakingly simple: "We just want Dad to come back home." These are not isolated tragedies. These are not statistics. These are shattered families suffering each day in suspended agony. These are innocent civilians held by terrorists, a horror the world must never normalize, a horror that Israel will not accept. Mr. President, we meet today again to discuss the humanitarian situation in Gaza, with a briefing from UNICEF concerning the situation of Palestinian children. Yes, the suffering of Palestinian children and the suffering of children anywhere demands our attention. Yet the glaring silence of this Council about Israeli children, about hostages, murdered toddlers like the Bibas boys, on traumatized survivors who will never see their parents again, on children running for shelter as Iranian missiles rain down on civilian population centers, is more than a technical omission. It is a moral failure. Scores of Israeli children were mutilated, tortured, and murdered on October 7th. Innocent lives cut short by the barbarity of Hamas terrorists. These children were victims of an evil that this Council seems unwilling to address or condemn: Hamas. Instead, we're presented with a narrative that forces Israel into a defendant's chair, while Hamas, the very cause of this conflict and the very instigator of suffering of Israelis, but also of Palestinians, goes unmentioned, unchallenged, and immune to condemnation. Some in this Council seem to forget what caused the humanitarian situation in Gaza. To address the situation without mentioning Hamas's war crimes, hiding weapons in schools, firing rockets from hospitals, using civilians as human shields, is not a humanitarian concern. It is propaganda. And even this additional session held today, a week before an already scheduled dedicated Council session, plays directly into the hands of the terrorists who engineered this conflict. It does not support peace, but politicizes suffering. Rather than requesting concrete consultations to learn about the efforts on the ground, the Council gathers to do the opposite, to pressure one side while absolving the other. There is a serious effort on the ground to achieve a hostage deal. Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit to Washington last week to meet with President Trump and other senior administration officials underscored just how committed Israel is in its will to achieve a hostage deal. And Israel continues to closely work with the United States and with Egypt and Qatar on reaching a deal that would bring our loved ones home and would end Hamas's reign of terror. Israel will keep supporting the entry of food, baby formula, medicine, and critical supplies because we believe innocent civilians deserve relief from the agony that Hamas has caused them. But we will not allow that aid to become fuel for terror. And yet, even as aid flows in, Hamas does everything in its power to disrupt it. They loot supplies, they obstruct distribution, they intimidate international aid workers, they fire at aid convoys, steal fuel intended for hospitals, and hoard food for their terrorists. They turn the sufferings of the civilians of Gaza into a tool of leverage, and then blame Israel for the very hardship they manufacture. Anyone who truly cares about humanitarian assistance must be serious about condemning those who prevent it from reaching the people. Let us stop pretending that Hamas is a bystander to this crisis. They are its architect. So I ask, does this council stand with the effort to improve the situation on the ground or with those who obstruct it? While this council speaks of humanitarian suffering, let us provide an update on the real humanitarian action underway. Over the past 2 weeks, Israel, together with international organizations, has facilitated the entry of thousands of tons of humanitarian aid into Gaza, using mechanisms designed specifically to bypass Hamas terrorists and reach the civilian population directly. These efforts have been coordinated with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has now delivered more than 66 million meals to Gazans. In addition, more than 7,500 tons of flour have been delivered to bakeries across Gaza, ensuring bread for families. Today alone, over 130 patients and caregivers, including children, exited Gaza through the Kerem Shalom and Allenby bridge crossings for treatments abroad. So perhaps it's time to put an end to the dissemination of disinformation by some in the Council regarding which paths lead to what. There are paths of cooperation and improvement. Earlier this week, on July 13th, nearly 100 tons of baby formula donated by UNICEF entered Gaza through the Kerem Shalom crossing, facilitated by Israel. We do wonder why this was omitted from the briefing this afternoon. It should be absolutely clear. The aid is for the civilians in Gaza, not for Hamas, and we will continue to facilitate it. Mr. President, Council members, one cannot claim to care about the children and people of Gaza while ignoring the suffering of Israeli children and hostages still held there. A mere mention, a single reference in a 15-minute presentation is not enough. The empty words will not do. You cannot champion peace while turning a blind eye to those who wage terror. If this chamber truly wishes to ease the suffering of all children, Israeli and Palestinians, then you must confront the root of this conflict, and that root is Hamas. Hamas has built its war machine at the expense of Palestinian lives and futures. It has robbed Gazan children of their innocence, indoctrinating them with hate in their classrooms, using them as human shields, and bearing weapons in their schools and hospitals. Imagine what Gaza could be without Hamas, a place of peace, where children learn math, not martyrdom, where aid builds homes, not terror tunnels, where coexistence replaces hate. There are those who wish to work with Israel in good faith, regional partners who cooperate with us to bring hope to children across the region. It can be achieved, but it can only be achieved without Hamas. And it is time for this Council to speak and act with moral clarity to achieve this goal, with demanding the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, deceased and alive, still held in Gaza, by condemning Hamas unequivocally for what it has done to Israelis, but also for what it has caused to the Palestinians, by designating Hamas as a terror organization it is. This is what the Council should be focusing on. Israel, on its part, will continue to work with the US, Egypt, and Qatar to reach a hostage deal and to bring all our loved ones home. Mr. President, to conclude, every child deserves safety. Every child deserves a future. That future cannot be built on hate. Our children, all children, deserve more than this Council's silence in the face of terror. They deserve your voice, and they deserve your action. And Alma, Roni, Emma, and Yuli deserve to hug their fathers again. Thank you, Mr. President.